The most important thing we have to say about dairy food is that in the dairy food, be it organic and be it raw, or be it cooked and homogenized, is casein. Casein is a protein that is literally used in many vegetarian cheeses to give it that rubbery, cheese-like, gluey texture. Dr. Colin Campbell, most of you know who he is, the top nutritional scientist today and who has ever lived, in his research of 50 years, unveiled the fact that casein was the #1 cause of cancer tumors out of all foods he researched, including meats. So listen closely. What we're now saying to you, clearly with a half a century of evidence from an extraordinary research scientist, that more tumors and more cancer comes from dairy consumption than even the horrific consumption of other animal food sources. Now, we're not suggesting one is better than the other. Anybody today in the so-called healthcare profession, and any doctor that would tell you that eating an animal is a necessity, is so out of touch with reality, I'd like to have a debate with them. Because the fact of the matter is that nobody on this planet that's a human being ever needed to consume animal foods. The vast majority of people on the earth today do not consume animal foods. The countries that in fact do, most of which we're listening from tonight, are the sickest nations with the highest rates of diseases, cancer being among them, obviously cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and down the list. So dairy consumption is not a smart thing. The better way for me to say this to the non-scientists listening today is think about what you're literally doing. How many of you would be willing to get on your knees next to a heifer, a cow, and suck from the breast of the cow milk? If you're willing to do that, possibly you need the dairy food. If you're not willing to do that, then you have enough common sense to realize that humans should never have eaten it. Probably along the way, when somebody was starving, the poor shepherd and his family in the fields, and the choice was death or some kind of food, when he saw the little calf eating from the mother, his choice was that. Somewhere along the way, a group of people, a tribe of people, or a culture of people started to adapt it. They happened to get into power at some point in history, probably more so in Europe. Then we were absolutely looking at them and admiring them, and that's how it happened. I'm sure that the guy who invented the consumption of caviar was a little off the deep end too. But caviar now supposedly is sophisticated food when they take a poor fish and squeeze the eggs out of it. I mean, you know, on and on it goes. In certain nations around the world, they actually consume cats. How many of you would consume your cat? Would you slaughter it and cook it tonight at your home? And so what's appalling to us in one culture may not be appalling in another culture. But all of this is appalling when you think about how the human body doesn't have a necessity for animal foods. It is hurt, harmed, and made ill by the consumption of animal foods. And this perpetuation of telling people and victimizing people with propaganda and misinformation that is generated from the dairy and meat industry, to me, is a sin. And it is one of the greatest sins when you're crippling a society by misinformation.